All right, welcome to the Future of Contact Centers podcast. We're having a special episode to debrief on our experience recently with Customer Contact Week Orlando, CCW. CCW is an event series we go to a couple times a year. Had a great event recently, and we want to talk about it. A little bit of a refresher about this podcast, if you haven't tuned in a while. This is really about Nate and I to sit down, talk about trends and insights in the space of contact centers. On the heels of a conference is a great time to see, to debrief on what technology we've seen and our thoughts on it. So I'm your co-host, Trevor Clark, CEO and founder of ShyftOff. Nate, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good to be back, everybody. Co-host Nate Nemore, head of partnerships here at ShyftOff. And in this episode particularly, we are going to be talking about the hottest trends that we picked up at the CCW event in customer experience. Trevor actually spoke at a fireside chat about AI and what it's going to do with volatility and people. So we'll get into that. And then lastly, if you are going through an AI implementation, we're going to let you know what you need to be thinking of prior to that. So we'll dive in.
To kick things off, CCW Orlando, what stood out to you, Nate, about the overall energy, the focus of the event, and maybe how does it compare prior years?
Yeah, I think that, good from a prior year perspective. I think prior years we went to these conferences and it was, AI is going to replace a lot of people. And so I was kind of going into this like, man, the whole theme is AI, replacing people. Like, what's it going to be? But I thought it was a really curious conference from the people that I spoke to. A lot of directors of contact centers, head of operations, director of experiences. And it was interesting to hear that theme of what stood out to me of AI is going to replace all your people is not what these leaders in the industry are thinking of. They're actually thinking about how to implement it from a AI plus people. Mm-hmm. And so I do think that AI will be implemented a lot more this year. We learned from, directors of customer experience a lot in healthcare that's already implemented it. But I thought it was eye-opening from everyone slow down. AI is definitely here, but it's going to be infused with people. So I thought it was good energy about that. I thought a lot of people came across curious, and so that's what I took from it. What about you?
Yeah, no, it's funny when you go into the main room where all the booths are set up. It's just AI. Every single booth had AI on it. I can't imagine there was a single one without it. And so that was a little overwhelming to me, and I thought kind of unique. We've been seeing that trend over the past few years, but like really showed up. I agree actually with what you're saying. There's like this the techie guys in the room, the AI companies are seem to be pushing like AI automation.
Yeah.
I was joking like we all should just sharpen our resumes because there's no need for contact centers anymore. But the reality of the room is like, look, no one's coming into the meeting saying, yeah, we've implemented this and it's working exceptionally well. We don't need agents anymore. Yeah. No one ever said that, right? Mm-hmm. In fact, what we're all saying is, look, we think there's a place for it, and it's going to be really successful. Probably, we like what we're seeing coming out of OpenAI, and there's a lot of powerful technology going on. But we're not sitting here ready to rip out our contact centers and replace them with AI agents. And so there's like this undertone in the room saying, "Wait, hang on, let's do this intelligently." I actually appreciated that perspective. I wasn't actually sure that would be the case. So I think everyone's kind of being pretty smart about AI and how they implement it. Was there anything else from the show that you want to call out, I guess, like trends or themes?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it too was, I agree with what you're saying is no one came into the room and said, we're going to eliminate people. But a lot of people were discussing how they're rolling out AI and what that looks like from a person perspective and culturally. And it was interesting because, again, no one was like, hey, we're going to release this technology and these people are going away. But it was based off actual research and studies of their customer base and which segment of customer bases want to talk to potentially an AI versus a person and what, task tier-wise somebody can, feel comfortable not to talk to a human being. I thought that was interesting, but it was very, I listened to a couple of financial institutions talk, and they were very much talking about how they're using AI to gain more insights and not take away at all people. But it was just primarily, we want to know why customers are coming in. We want to know where the call's going, the appropriate direction of that call, and then also the appropriate resolution of it to increase, CSAT, NPS scores, customer satisfaction. So I thought that was interesting. The other thing I thought of, so I talked a little bit about with the head of operations and customer experience of Chegg, which is a big logistics company.
Yeah.
And he was actually talking about that he thinks AI is going to make the contact center more complex. So it's going to raise the level of that human being inside your contact center because it may take away some technologies like tasks and little stuff. But then when you talk to somebody that is human, it's going to be like a full service. It's going to be a more complex issue. And so I thought it was interesting hearing that perspective of it's actually going to raise the level of contact center complexity.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I was having similar conversations with some of the AI tech companies and kind of testing my hypothesis with them, see if they're aligned. And everyone kind of has like the same belief that AI is going to be really successful at taking out low complexity and routine repetitive calls, really things that people don't want to call about anyway, like, change my update this, change that, where's my, what status updates, things like that. Those can be pretty much eviscerated, I think, with AI. But what's left over now is the higher complexity, to your point. And so now your hiring profile for your agents probably just changed because now they've got to handle really the hard calls. Yeah. And the other thing we were talking about too, and we'll get into this in a little bit, is what does that do to the volatility? So I think operationally, let's say these AI initiatives are really successful at taking out calls or emails, chats, whatever. What you're left with is a very unpredictable, very complex contact center. And I didn't hear enough people talking about that. Yeah. And what, basically kind of thinking a few chess moves ahead. I think that's really where the next problem is going to be, is when these technologies do take off and we see some really great results, you've got a mess on your hands on the people side. That was one of my big takeaways. I don't know what other, did you have any other insights from the show that you think are worth calling out?
Well, what you said about the demand curve and the call volume is very much a topic, like the workforce management aspect of it. And the show wasn't focused on that, so there wasn't a lot of discussion around it, but talking with our colleagues there, they were thinking about it, and that's an unknown. I think that's probably, there is some hesitation of implementing AI.
You're saying the skepticism?
Well, it's not only the skepticism, but it's still, AI is still widely unknown. So if you ask me what's another thing I uncovered, AI is still widely unknown. Did we learn last week that people are probably going to adopt it more? Yes. But it's still widely unknown what it's going to look like from the customer perspective and then the context and a volume perspective. So people are aware of that, but that is a topic that didn't get touched, that needs to get touched. Maybe it's a few, chess moves ahead, like you said. But
one other thing I'll call out, and hopefully this doesn't backfire on me, but there were a lot of, so you had all these new companies come out. I would say I probably talked to 5 or 6 companies that came from Y Combinator. So like basically San Francisco has basically descended on the contact center space. And I think, 3-5 years ago, I don't think they knew it existed. Maybe they did, but a lot of these guys have kind of descended into our space, and there's a little bit of an arrogance from these AI companies thinking, "Oh yeah, we got this. You guys are so outdated. You're out." And I just call that out. That's one observation I made. It's like they're a little bit out of touch with what actually goes on in these environments, and I think and they'll wisen up, but. You could tell a difference, and you can almost tell, like when you're talking to somebody, like if they're really from our space, if they're not, and I don't know, they're coming in and I think they think it's going to be an easy solve. Yeah. But I think the people that have been here for a while say, well, we've heard these stories before, and there's going to be some complexity we have to work through. But the good news is I think everyone will find the path.
I think that's a good call out, because a lot of these AI, the vendors that we were there, and to your point, they're coming out of the West Coast. They're not building for contact centers; they're building as a whole. And so that has to be integrated into contact centers, and there's very intricate things to do there.
Yeah, there's a lot they don't know, but that's okay. We'll help them figure it out. So I think that was, I guess concrete takeaways. We've been talking about our feelings on the event overall. I think it was a good event. Yeah. I think we'll go back, especially it's in our backyard here in Orlando. We're in Tampa. But what are you doing next? Like, what's the immediate next step that you're going to be taking on our to-do list following CCW?
Yeah. So. Well, I had a lot of good conversations. I mean, I talked to a few guys, head of operations at IHG. We talked to CIO at WellSpan, and so following up with those people to understand like what they really thought about the conference and what they're doing and how they're preparing not just this year but the following year. So we're right now actually releasing predictions report, and we're trying to just talk to people and gain learnings of what they're doing right now with AI. So that's the immediate next steps, is actually further the conversation, not just let it die in Orlando. What about you?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think when we brought a lot of, I think, fresh ideas to this event. We tested out, we didn't we didn't exhibit, right? I think from our own, like getting to know people in the market and is more valuable, and spending time with them, having real connections versus setting up like a flea market stand.
Yeah.
It was
relieving.
Yeah, it was great. It wasn't chained to that thing all weekend.
Yeah.
But I think there's still a place for that. Not to say it's a bad strategy, but I was glad that we could test some of those ideas. Every single conversation I had with whether it was we say brands, whether it was a brand, somebody who operates contact center for a company, or if it was a vendor selling technology, I was testing my thoughts out loud with them, which was really, really nice. It also helped me with the fireside chat that we did on Wednesday, which I thought was really good. So again, for me, it's like kind of helping me refine kind of our position on things, and then also kind of get feedback from the attendees as well.
Yeah. So. And before we move on to your fireside chat, out of curiosity, did you see any like emerging tech that you thought was really cool from an AI perspective? Or?
Yeah, well, again, everything had AI in it. So.
Yeah.
But you said this earlier, and I meant to call it out. I think there's a pretty exciting evolution of like quality assurance, analytics, and management that AI is helping us accelerate. For example, in a couple of the programs, we have AI kind of listening to all the calls and evaluating certain things to happen, like say there's call avoidance, which we don't ever want, but we need to be proactive about addressing it, or there was some sort of tone on the call. We're able to pick up all of this information about 100% of the calls without having to rely on like a human workforce to listen to every call and then make a sort of subjective.
Yes, that's a great point.
Anyway, I love that. I think that's a really big step forward. And so there are a couple companies at CCW that I thought are doing it really well.
Yeah.
And I think that's an area where we're all going to benefit from pretty quickly.
Yeah, to call one out, I know Northwestern Mutual actually spoke on that, and they're using AI to improve the human touch points and not just rush and, to your point, rely on a workforce team to make a subjective call and then potentially get that call wrong, and that leads to a lot of issues. So that was cool. One technology that I did like a lot, it was from a big healthcare company. They called it Anna, and it was probably the most impressive voice AI, like A to Z, like full conversation, stores the knowledge behind. And that was really interesting, and they were trialing it out with their older consumer base, and it was actually, they did demos. I did think that one was cool, and that's the first one. I've listened to a lot of those over the years since we've gone to conferences, but that was actually... that actually kind of spooked me a little bit. I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. But how sustainable is that for everybody? Probably not. No, but it was cool.
I think we take the position of, hey, let's not resist technology. It's gonna go. Right. It's gonna go the direction it's gonna go, and it could be extremely successful. Yeah. So it's cool to see those things kind of playing out.
So that's a good segue. So our position is we are embracing technology. There's no reason not to. You talked at CCW Orlando, you talked a little bit about AI, infusing it with people, our hypothesis. How was that experience, number one? Then number two, tell the audience a little bit about what you spoke to.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's great to be able to float an idea out that's a little bit novel and get feedback on it real time. The feedback was solid. So our position is, let's not debate if AI is going to be impactful.
Sure.
Let's just debate to win and to what extent. And I think we don't know those answers. We don't know if next week there's going to be some advancement that allows us to get rid of 80, 90% of our call volume. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it's realistic. But let's just pretend for a minute that these technologies are exceptionally successful at their objective, which is obviously to help us, reduce costs, automate, get rid of some of the human elements. Okay, well, great. Let's play that out. When you start to rip out 60, 70% of your volume,
sure,
you've introduced you basically ripped out this base load, and actually in the predictions report, there's some helpful visuals in there because it's a little bit difficult to explain, but call volume kind of tends to fluctuate, but when you have 2-3 times more volume than you will post AI, you kind of hide behind that law of large numbers. And so organizations that operate large call centers can still hit service levels and keep their costs low and staff kind of close to the requirements, and there's not a lot of pain. But when you start to rip that base load out, you've created a tremendous amount of complexity because all the simple calls are gone. and volatility. It's no longer super easy to predict when that call is going to happen. And so your only chance of sort of staffing for when your AI breaks or complex issues emerge is to basically always be overstaffed, which is going to erode the value prop of you implementing your AI. And so our position is, if you're not thinking about what happens after successfully implementing AI, you're going to make these promises and you might actually deliver on them with the AI product, but then on the human side, you've created a mess. And unless you add flexibility to handle sort of unpredictable ebbs and flows, and unless you can tap into the labor market that is capable of handling more complex work, then you're going to struggle. And kind of the point is, the traditional human contact center model is not going to be able to scale to that. And so we're trying to plant the seed now, because you really need some flexibility implemented before you go into headfirst into these AI trials and tests. But anyway, I think that's for us kind of thinking, all right, cool, let's lean in. Then what happens next? And I think the whole combination of AI plus on-demand humans is really how we're going to extract the most value from sort of this change in technology.
Yeah, and that's also, I think, the next steps you asked earlier. What are we doing right now? I think with our customers, we're also sharing these thoughts and making sure they're thinking about it responsibly too, which we believe that they are. But that's good. So I guess the last question I have for you. So on the fireside chat, how was the audience? I know you got a few questions. I mean, were they receptive? Were they not thinking about it? What was the feedback you got from it?
It was a lot of fun. Actually, so every time you do one of these events, they tell you don't sell. And that's I'm a hard salesperson anyway. So we're just talking concepts, and then invariably every time I open it up to Q&A, everyone's very inquisitive about what we've built, and so I end up answering all the questions about ShyftOff, which, hey, if you're going to ask, I'll answer. But not going to present. Anyway, it was really cool. I thought that the audience, when you're up on stage, you can see everyone, right? So as you're making points, you can kind of see head nods, and so I saw a lot of good head nods. I thought the concept was well received, and then the questions were, I thought, pretty interesting, because we must have planted a good seed, because they're asking me a lot of questions about how it works and how a model like ours could be implemented, and it was good. I enjoyed it. I felt like I was just fielding sales questions, though. It was great.
Yeah, and for those not in the room, they can learn more in our predictions report that we released.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last week as well, which covers a lot of great things. And
the cool thing about the predictions report is the math, and I know it's kind of like a lot, but
it's a lot for me. Yeah.
You can really see where if you can head down this path of a very successful AI initiative, like you're running through you're doing victory laps and getting your promotion. You can visualize it in your head, but there's another side of that coin that's going to hit you with the staffing, and I guess that math is in there. And again, if it is kind of dense, would actually love feedback on it, and happy to answer any questions if any listeners look at it and want to rip it to shreds. I'm all for it.
It's funny when you say about the math. So our CRO at the conference, we're talking about the math, and he's like flipped over a piece of paper and wrote a graph that was like basically your volatility was like more call volume, less agents, not happy customers, less call volume, matching agents, happy customers, we can help with this. And he was just like showing people the piece of paper when they asked what your hypothesis was. And I thought it was like, well, yeah, that fills all the boxes, but I thought it was funny.
There's definitely a simpler way to get the message across.
Cut through the math. It's a drawing. So that's good. Anything else that, any takeaways that you had from Orlando, from the AI,
No, I do love the CCW events.
We
attend at least one a year, but it's looking like probably 3 or 4. And everyone goes there ready to learn, ready to contribute, and so that was a big takeaway for me.
Yeah,
and I like the CCW Orlando because it's I don't know how many attendees, but I'd say around 1,000. Was it 500? Okay,
yeah, intimate. Yeah.
So much more intimate than you go to Vegas, which is amazing in its own way. But it's you're one of like 5,000.
Yeah.
And so this is a great way for us to have more in-depth conversations. We get better sleep because you're not dealing with the casinos blaring at you all the time. I like this event a lot.
You get to see the sun a little bit.
Yeah, the sun was out. It was great. It was a good event. We'll definitely be going back.
That's awesome. It was a good debriefing. I think high level for me, AI, I thought it was really responsible. A lot of these executives and industry leaders talking about using AI to help people, not replace people. Yeah. And so it was cool for us to kind of go in there with our hypothesis of, hey, volatility is going to go up, and so you need to partner with great agents at the right time. So that was great.
All right, so Nate, thanks so much for the time today. I think this was a great debriefing. For those of you listening, if you want to dive in more on any of the topics we talked about, make sure you go check out our 2025 predictions report. There's a lot of good insight in there. We'll link it here in the podcast. You can find it on our website. But jump in there and dive a little deeper and let us know if you have any questions. Again, always, you can send us a note. You can reach out. We'd love to connect. On LinkedIn or email, wherever you guys are. And again, thanks again. Until next time.